Now that opens up something there, because popular guys exist on a different level than regular students. Mm-hmm. And when popular guys come to you and open themselves up to you and for your insight, that means you must have really resonated with them, because there's already kind of a distance, a space between that older guy and us popular younger guys. I mean, what can you know about us? But for them to actually go to you and seek your knowledge, seek your wisdom, that means that you must really be good at communicating with them on a level that makes them feel not just comfortable enough to communicate with you in that respect, but actually seek you in that respect.
I really enjoyed it. You know, I've been on both sides of that as I grew up as a kid. There's times when I was very unpopular, and then sometimes maybe a little bit more popular. But I see a lot of it's with our networking. You know, we're out there networking. How do you help people and help other businesses? And again, it gets back to focusing on others. And so I want to help these guys to really, a lot of it is not only how they work with, you know, when they're talking to the girls in this beach camp, but also how do they relate to the other guys? Like in our conduct, you know, is there anybody you're picking on? You know, do you see how that's not really a good thing? And you try to point it out to them. And you show it in a way where you're not condescending and yelling at them. You just, hey, do you understand how that's not going to work? And they start to see it. Do you understand how this guy has got some expertise in areas that you don't have? You know, sometimes the guy that's kind of more of what you would call in the old world the nerd is really helpful. They can help figure out when the oven didn't work and we're trying to cook a meal, this guy could figure it out, you know, or he could cook or do something. Everybody has got a different skill, and we need to honor that, and we don't treat anybody like they're less than a human, because it's not right. And secondly, they've got gifts that we don't have. So yeah, it was really exciting. I really enjoyed it, and I think the boys enjoyed it too.
Alrighty, my friend. Now, next two questions I'm going to have to call conflict questions. They're going to be back to back.
Oh, okay.
Got to be some conflict here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, over the years, has the tutoring body, education apparatus, for lack of a better expression, has it peacefully coexisted with the massive entrenched government-supported education establishment? Has the establishment put pressure on tutors, like that's our competition or something like that, put pressure on you guys, whether politically or whatever, that makes it a little more difficult when it is to do what you do, or do we see you as partners in the same goal?
So it really is it's kind of a both. So it's yes to both of them, because there is some entrenchment. Sometimes the private schools are just as bad as the public schools. We've got one private school that they have their own tutoring after school, so they don't want to support anybody else. Now, the parents can call us independently, and that's fine. But for the most part, with the public school, it's a little bit hard to get in there, but I understand it. They don't want to be seen as promoting one tutoring company over another. So there's things we can do, and we sponsored a middle school in the Fairfield area, Salyards, and so we just come in and provide goodies for the employees a couple times a year. Yeah. And there's a group of us that do that, including our buddy Floyd. He's in on that with us, and so we do that. But so generally, no, they don't tell me what to do, but they do. They're a little bit reluctant to recommend us. So what we do is just try to be there. We're at different events, so they get to know us, and it just makes them more comfortable with us. You know, we're extremely careful that when we're tutoring kids, you know, this should be pretty obvious, but we don't get any politics whatsoever. We're just there to help the child. So it doesn't matter what the parents' political views are. It has nothing to do with anything. I don't care what the school's doing in that regard. We're there to help them with math and reading and science and test prep, whatever they need help with. And so there's a little tension, but not really. I mean, I just go with it. I know it's going to be a little harder to get in. People will give me these recommendations all the time. Why don't you just go in there and go to the school system and get in there? And it's not quite that easy. But that doesn't mean there isn't something that I can look at and do better with. So I have to still have that my blinders a little bit off, so that I am looking for new opportunities. But there's a little bit of that. But they're not. You know, I guess you could say with math it's a little tough because they have this 4-box method that they teach, and that nobody that's over like 30 years old understands what that is. But that's just kind of the way that the school is teaching the masses of students. So we just go with it. We can help with that system. We can help them with regular math. We're there to help the students where they need it. So when they call us and tell us what they need help with, that's what we're going to do. So we're more working with parents and not as much with the schools, but we're partnering. We are there with the schools. It's just parents are the ones that call us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and it helped because you swerved me to the next point of potential conflict, and that is the parents. Now, have you had encounters where the parent invited you out, they were essentially a prospect, and I mean, you have your initial consultations, you speak about things, you kind of lay things out and all that, and you get the parents' input, and it's clear to you, now I'm just guessing here, spitball, it's clear to you that there is a appreciable gap between the parents' expectation about what it is a tutor provides you, Texas Tutor Team, and what it is that you actually provide in order to promote the growth of the child, academically speaking. Have you experienced a gap like that where you almost had to take the parent through a pseudo-therapy session to get them to understand better about what it is that you're actually going to provide versus what it is they think you're going to provide?
Yeah, so it does happen from time to time where the parent has an expectation that is maybe unreasonable given where the student is at. Probably the biggest issue that we have, especially with high school students, is the parent wants all these great things from the student. The student is not that interested in it. That is the biggest problem we have. So let me give you an example, like the SAT. The parent says, hey, my child got a score, it's not high enough, we want to get him into a certain college, we want to get a scholarship, so you want to get in, number one, and number two, we want to get the scholarship, and the child is not that bought into it. So we start tutoring, and they're not doing the homework. They're just not that engaged. That's probably the biggest issue we have. So then I go back, either the tutor or myself will go back, and that's one thing we're different. I will always be involved if as it's needed. I'll go back to parents and say, hey, your child's not really doing the homework, or they're canceling every other week. With SAT, that doesn't work at all. You will get no benefit at all if you go every other week. And so I tell the parent, this is not going to work for your child unless something changes. And sometimes they say, let's just stop tutoring. And that's fine. I just don't want the parent to go through a program for several weeks, they're paying a lot of money, and the child's not getting any better. That to me is the worst outcome we could have. Because we're not in it just to make money, we're in it to help these children, but we're taking the parents' money, we're not giving them the value. That's probably our biggest issue. The other issue that I do see sometimes is, and I think this is changing now, there are some parents out there that they're like, my kid does not need a 504 or IEP. And I don't know if you're familiar with those. Those are programs that more or less are kind of special needs, but we got to be careful how we use that term.
Yeah.
But they need some extra help. So it could be they just read slower, and so they can't. If they go on the SAT test, they're going to have a tough time because they read slower than they would say normal development of a student would be.
Yeah.
Sometimes the parents will say, no, my kid does not have that problem, and that's the end of the story. And so that can make it hard to tutor as well. It's just going to be a much slower learning curve. On the SAT, it's not going to work so well. But if the parent is open to it, then a lot of times we've been able to help them. Hey, a 504 does this, the IEP does this. They're a little bit different, and they can navigate that path. We're not the experts to walk them through it, but at least we can lead them in that direction. And so if they do that, then their child, literally on the SAT, they can get more time. They can go to class and be up in the front of the class so they don't have all the distractions behind them instead of the front. They can be in another room when they take a test. It's quiet. And I've found out now even universities are doing this. My kids went to Baylor, and Baylor has a program for that. So if the child's having problems reading, they can go take a test. They go into class every day, just like every other child. On the test day, they go to a different building and take the test somewhere else. So we know that we've got these issues, and we're working with the kids the way we can. It's just a matter of what does the parent want us to do, and then what do we as experts see. And sometimes, most of the time, they're definitely aligned. But once in a while, they're not, and that's where we have to have the tough decision, or the tough question. We had one parent, we've been tutoring for a while, and we finally said, I think it's time for it was twin girls. One of them needs an IEP. It's an individualized plan, and the other one did not. And so, and she kind of broke down in tears, and it was really touching. The tutor and the parent and I were in tears, and so she started working on that process and that worked. But she accepted it. She's from a part of the world where that might not have been that accepted, but she's like, hey, this is what we need to do, let's do it. And we were so excited to be able to help her. So those are the stories we would really like to hear.
You alluded to it earlier, and that is behavioral disorder. ADHD, anxiety, autism, bipolar, tantrums, etc. Now, I am a total babe in the woods. I have a vaguest notion of the tutor's approach to common teen or child behavioral disorders. I am, however, glad to have a seasoned professional in the Plum Chair to let all of us know what the most practical approach would be under those circumstances. So I'm going to give you the entire floor, brother. If you could talk about behavior disorders, what happens, how you encounter them, how you maneuver, the whole thing. It's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Bill. So the big thing we do, so let's start with ADHD. That's the common. It's basically kids having a hard time staying focused, right? They may be on medication, they may not be on medication, and we don't get really into that whole discussion. But what we do is we come to the home for the student's home. That's usually a really good starting point because then they're comfortable and we can then start addressing the issues. The thing I recommend to parents is take away all the distractions that you can. Now, being that we're in somebody's house, we do have to be we want to be in an open area, so we're not in a bedroom or something like that. We are in an open area, but can you keep the sound down, take the phone away, all the other technological devices, and let's just work on it. And so I think kids can focus better than we sometimes give them credit for if we take away the distractions. The problem is, and I can tell you, having a cell phone, a smartphone now, older in life, it still distracts me too, but I can put that down and then I can focus. And I think we have to do the same thing with kids. So if we go to the house, put all that stuff away for an hour. You're not saying forever. If you're the parent, you can take it away for 2 hours. Whatever you want. Maybe you like that. Maybe you go eat dinner afterwards, and you can everybody can talk for dinner, which is great. But we just get in. Okay, so show me what do you got. Or if we're doing an assessment, we usually do that the first time we meet. We'll do it like a math assessment. We can find out what they really are struggling with, and then we can dialogue. What is it? What are you thinking when you see this type of problem? And sometimes they say, I don't have any idea, or I thought it was an addition problem, but it's a subtraction problem. Just whatever the issue is, then we can deal with it. But really, a lot of it is just taking away those distractions. I think too, and I learned this myself because I probably have ADHD myself. Never been diagnosed, but I probably have it. Is small blocks of time are better than a large block of kind of unstructured time. So that's why for young kids we only do an hour at a time at max. I do need an hour just because we're sending a tutor to the house, and you got to pay them for enough time to make it worth them driving. Yeah. But we can switch subjects. We can there's things we can pivot within that hour, or take even sometimes take a 5-minute break and let the child stretch. But what we do is have an amount of time. We tell them, here's how much time you're going to have when you're done. I would do that with everything that kids are doing with their schoolwork. Or really, it could be anything, but schoolwork and homework for sure. This is when we're going to do English homework, okay, could be 4:30 to 5. Okay, so that's all you're going to have time for that, so you got to hurry and get it done. Excuse me. That's, to me, blocks of time help, because then you kind of have a sense of urgency. Oh my gosh, it's 10 minutes to 5. I've got to hurry and get this done. And the kids they'll catch on to that. Then to go into more difficult situations, yes, there's dysgraphia. There's different ways that we can work with dysgraphia. That's where kids sometimes have a hard time taking what they're reading and writing it. There's some kind of a neurological area, and I'm not an expert on this, but there's an issue that doesn't make it easy for them to do it. And it's picking up their hand that sometimes is a problem. So sometimes we'll work with cursive. Cursive is actually good for kids that have dysgraphia. Yeah. Not necessarily 100% of the cases, but it can help them because they're keeping their hand down on the paper. And sadly, I know you probably maybe already know this, but we don't teach cursive in school anymore.
No, I did not know that.
That was coming back, and then the pandemic came, and then it kind of went away. There may be some schools that are doing this, but for the most part, they're not. So that kind of helps with dyslexia. Like I said, if it's not real bad and they're able to cope, we can help them again by